How much does it actually cost to start a podcast? If you really want to know the truth, you're going to want to watch this video because I'm going to tell you right now it's not financial. My name is Rich Cardona and I own a podcast agency. We've launched and produced some of the world's top podcasts. We have 26 million downloads across all of them. And I'm certainly here to be completely honest with you about it. I actually love to talk people out of starting a podcast or continuing their podcast because of questions like this. And the reason is the cost is not monetary. If you really want to know how much it costs to start a podcast, you really need to only know a few things. What podcast hosting platform do you want? Depending on how many downloads you're actually getting, it could be anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $265 a month if you're doing millions. But if you're just starting, you're probably not going to be around that. Then you just get to equipment. If you're doing a video podcast, I promise you can use your existing phone and be completely okay. I would put it horizontally in 4K so that way you could punch in for vertical shorts if you need to promote the podcast. And then obviously you're going to probably need a microphone and you don't need anything like this. Okay, you could get a simple microphone off Amazon for maybe $30. So if we're talking camera that you already have, a $30 microphone, and a podcast hosting platform, we are talking maybe $30 total. If you want cameras like this and lenses like this, or a microphone like this, or a sound recorder like this, then obviously the price is going to go up. But let's really get into the truth behind how much it costs to start a podcast. One of the costs is going to be to your self-esteem. And by that, I mean you may be so unbelievably discouraged at how slow it takes to get the following that you want. And the truth is you need to know why you want that following in the first place. Is it for vanity? Is it for your ego? Is it for marketing? Is it to make more money with a product or service that you sell? But either way, if that's the main goal, it's still probably going to hurt your ego if you're making a podcast that not a lot of people are watching or listening to. And the reason is you're putting effort behind it. And very few people that I know have the ability to just continuously put out a ton of effort with no result. You really have to manage your expectations when it comes to podcasting, because this is one of those things where it takes so much effort to get it going. And once it gets going, it's easy to maintain after some time, but that does not necessarily mean the results are going to be there. Now, in order to be flexible enough to just have expectations that can be withstood over the course of time, you're going to have to do the second cost, which has to do with the effort in terms of mastering something. Now, this is not mine. This is something I got from Vin Jang, who I absolutely love. Look him up. He is a fantastic storyteller, communicator, and that's what he teaches. And I love this mastery process that he talks about. So at the top of a triangle, it's going to be trying and applying. Then on the bottom, you're going to review and reflect. And then last is plan and improve. So basically you have to try, right? You have to try and apply some of the things that you know about podcasting, some of the things you know about hosting, some of the things that you heard, or hopefully some of the things you've consumed in some of the videos that I've done. But then you have to review and reflect. And this is not necessarily correcting anything. You're just gonna have to review it, which nobody does. You're gonna have to cost yourself taking time to listen back to your own podcast, and then you're going to have to reflect on that. Not just reflect what went well and what went wrong, but how you felt. How you feel when it comes to creating content is a huge indicator whether it's going to be something you're going to be able to do long term or not. And then lastly, you're going to have to plan and improve. The only way you're going to be able to overcome some of the things that you discovered during your reviewing and your reflecting is by planning and improving for the next time. And if you are not the type of person that is continuously seeking to improve, then you will have just cost yourself a bunch of time and effort for nothing. I love this analogy that Daniel Priestley explained to me in person when I met him in Raleigh when I was in support of my client Chris Do. They were at a speaking event. We're backstage before they're going up to speak, and we're talking about podcasting, and Daniel gives this fantastic analogy about a 100-story building. Okay, this 100-story building that is just going to be just an amazing skyscraper, a sight to see. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to have all these beautiful offices, and we are going to build our way up to that. That is our goal, is to build that when it comes to a podcast, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a ton of effort. He says, if you get to 20 floors and then you quit, the building is worth nothing. And that's exactly what I mean by what you're costing yourself by investing into this and not seeing it through. Another cost is going to be this kind of element of doubt that may overtake you when you start to think like, what else do I have to talk about? I am telling you, I work with people who've made a ton of content, and sometimes they feel as if they are going to run through every single thing they know in 10 episodes, and then they find themselves in a situation where they're just like, what the freak am I going to talk about next? And something I love that I heard recently was imposter syndrome is only real if you're lying. You are going to fool yourself into believing you have nothing to talk about, but the problem is that you actually tried to squeeze it all into just this short time frame where you need to just slowly build up your audience little by little. And if you move too fast, it's actually going to cost you your confidence, because you're suddenly going to find yourself resorting to ChatGPT to tell you what it is you need to be talking about. And it's all because you were in such a rush to just get everything out there as soon as you could. The podcast is also going to cost you time in terms of how you promote it. If you are an audio only podcast, this is going to be a big uphill battle for you, because podcasting is very much word of mouth, and you are going to have to tell a ton of people that you are podcasting. And if they want to see anything about it on Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn, they're not going to really have anything except maybe some words and a picture, and then you telling people to go listen to your podcast. If you have a video podcast, it's going to take you a lot of time, because you are going to have to look through the podcast and find and edit clips that you could post on social. That's going to take time, but promoting your podcast is probably one of the most underrated things in terms of time suck that it's going to need in order to promote it. Now, on the flip side of that, there's also other ways. There's your newsletter, there's emails, there's text messaging groups. All these things take time. Now, the part where it really gets interesting is if you start getting responses to those texts, to those posts that you're posting, to your email, because it would be incredibly crazy of you to not take the time to respond to these people, thank them, and ask them for their feedback, etc. So that is going to be something that you absolutely have to take into consideration. Podcasting is also going to cost you some of your peace. While we sometimes have no issue scrolling on Instagram for hours at a time, seeing things we want to see and seeing things we don't want to see, podcasting is going to cause you some issues with your inner peace, so to speak, because you are going to realize one time or many times that you forgot to press record, or that someone interrupted your podcast, or that you deleted it by accident. Even though it can be extremely simple, I have found that there's always something that could go wrong with podcasts. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was in Las Vegas recently, and I was supporting my clients, Chris Doe and Arjun Dhingra. So what I did was I got a suite. My friend Omar from the video department was so freaking awesome. He's like, look, you get the suite, I'll bring the gear. So he was going to use the suite for podcasting. Chris was going to use the suite for podcasting, and so was Arjun. So the night before the conference actually started, we set everything up. And I noticed that Omar didn't have AC power for his camera like I do right now. And he's just like, oh, I use batteries. I'm like, dude, I never risk it. That's crazy. Like, no way. We're going to be having so many podcasts back to back. Now, that being said, my camera right now for this is connected to a Zoom F3 field recorder, which means the sound from here is going directly into the camera. That's what I'm used to. Well, for Omar's setup, we had to have the audio recorder record separately, and we had to have the video record separately. Well, guess who forgot to press record on the little audio recorder for Chris Doe's first interview? This guy. And I mean, everything else was completely pristine. And then later, one of the cameras stopped recording because of the battery, even though it was connected to one of those other batteries that had a lot of juice. So my client has 10 minutes less of video because of that. So what you don't think can go wrong can go wrong. Even if it's as simple as just using your phone, you might do something as simple as forgetting to press record, and you're going to be like, well, I'm not freaking doing that again. So if it feels like I'm trying to talk you out of podcasting, it's because I am. But I do have to say this. If you think about that analogy in that 100-story building, if at that 20th floor, you're like, I can't do this, but you're able to get to the 30th floor, get to the 40th floor, the returns on what happens once you've broken through the madness is absolutely huge. There are people with really low production podcasts who've just improved year over year. And there's one that comes to mind specifically. It's called Hustle Humbly. These two real estate agents with a great track record based out of Baton Rouge. Now, when you think real estate, you think of nice cars, nice watches, luxury homes. These two women, for lack of a better term, are normal, meaning they're relatable and they have such good rapport and they talk to you like you're in their living room or in the studio with them, and they've just been at it. Now they have a top 100 podcast. They have sponsors, and they're probably just enjoying it more and more. So the returns can be outsized as long as you have the ability to continue to build floor after floor after floor after floor. The question you have to ask yourself at the beginning is just how much patience are you going to have with this? When you look in the grand scheme of things, there's about 300,000 active podcasts. That's how many podcasts there are out there active, which is at least once a month and have published something in the last 10 days. And that's across a vast array of categories. Meanwhile, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are in the hundreds of millions of active users, which means all the content that you need to make for all of those different things is just going to be extremely time consuming, but the competition is way high. And for you to get discovered is going to take strategy after strategy and tactic after tactic and money and more money. It's going to make you wildly uncomfortable. The ability to create content while being yourself is going to be the thing that connects you with the people you want to be watching and you want to be listening. Of course, if you work hard enough at Instagram or YouTube or anything else like that, you have a chance. But the highest probability is in podcasting. It just takes longer and it doesn't sound as sexy. And you're going to say to yourself, everyone has a podcast. No, everyone has Facebook. Everyone has Instagram. But when it comes to podcasting, if this is something you're passionate about, if you want to create and you have a message that you want to get out there, whether it's encouraging, whether it's entertaining, whether it's educational, or whether it's empowering, these are the things that can help you build that 100-story building. And although I would love for you to get there, I thought it would be super helpful to be completely honest about the cost of podcasting. And if this is your first exposure to me, please check out my playlist that's going to help you so much on how to start a podcast. So that way you are going through it in a rigid way that gives you the highest chance and likelihood for success. Again, if we're meeting, my name is Rich Cardona. I help founders amplify their message through video podcasts. And my goal is to make sure that you get the education you need to realize or recognize if this is viable for you or not. If you ever have any questions, just leave me a comment or send me a DM on Instagram at PodcastRich, and I'll get back to you later.